The explosion tore through the hull of the USS Defiant like paper. Emergency klaxons blared as red warning lights bathed the command deck in an eerie glow. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Captain Jack Reynolds gripped the edge of the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the flickering screens. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, life support failing. The young lieutenant's voice cracked with panic. Jack's mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. The alien vessel had appeared out of nowhere, its weapons technology far beyond anything they'd encountered. Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Get them to the escape pods now. Sir, what about you? Jack straightened his back, the decision already made. I'll initiate the distress beacon and ensure everyone gets out. His eyes swept across the faces of his crew, some barely out of training, others veterans like himself. That's an order, Lieutenant. As the bridge crew reluctantly moved toward the evacuation route, Jack caught sight of 2 engineers trapped behind a fallen support beam in the adjacent corridor. Without hesitation, he rushed toward them, pushing through the thickening smoke. The ship groaned around him, metal twisting as systems failed. He reached the first engineer, pulling debris away with strength born from decades of military discipline. Almost there, son, hold on. The alien vessel fired again. The last thing Jack remembered was a blinding flash and the sensation of being thrown backward as the Defiance reactor went critical. 5 years later, the Texas sun beat down mercilessly as Jack Reynolds adjusted his security uniform. At 65, he still maintained the rigid posture of his military days, though the uniform he wore now carried none of the honors of his former rank. The NASA Advanced Research Facility sprawled before him, a complex of gleaming buildings and launch pads where America's brightest minds worked on the next generation of space exploration. And he was just the man who checked IDs at the gate. Jack nodded to a group of young engineers as they flashed their badges. One of them, a kid barely 30 with an MIT sweatshirt, didn't bother hiding his smirk. Morning, old-timer. Don't fall asleep at your post today, huh? Jack just smiled politely. He'd commanded space missions, led troops during Desert Storm, risen to the rank of colonel in the Air Force. Now he was a punchline to kids who hadn't even been born when he flew his first combat mission. But he didn't correct them. He never did. His small security office was Spartanly furnished, a desk, a chair, and a bank of monitors showing various sections of the facility. But Jack had added one personal touch, a worn photograph of his old crew from the Defiant, taken just days before the disaster. Sometimes he would talk to them, explaining his observations about the facility's security vulnerabilities that no one else seemed interested in hearing. Another day in paradise, right, folks? He murmured to the photo as he settled in for his shift. Jack had developed a routine over the past 3 years working security. Every 2 hours, he would make a complete perimeter check, noting patterns in staff movements, testing door locks, and identifying blind spots in the security system. He kept meticulous notes in a small, leather-bound journal, a habit from his military days. The facility director had called it excessive when Jack had submitted his first comprehensive security assessment. After that, Jack had simply kept his observations to himself. The afternoon dragged on as Jack monitored the satellite feed displays. NASA maintained a network of research satellites, and part of the security team's job was to watch for anomalies. Most guards ignored this duty, focusing instead on the physical security of the facility. Not Jack. His experience as a mission commander had taught him that threats often came from unexpected directions. At 15:30, something caught his eye, a brief fluctuation in one of the distant monitoring satellites. Most would dismiss it as solar interference or a technical glitch, but Jack had seen similar patterns before. During the Cold War, Soviet satellites would create similar disruptions when trying to mask their presence. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the parameters to enhance the signal. There it was again, a rhythmic pattern too regular to be natural interference. "Hello, what are you?" Jack muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced precision. The satellite wasn't malfunctioning, it was receiving an external signal. Jack isolated the frequency and began recording the transmission. As he worked, Dr. Miranda Wells, the facility's lead astrophysicist, entered the security office. She was one of the few people who treated Jack with genuine respect. "Working hard or hardly working, Colonel?" she asked with a warm smile, using his former military title rather than his current position. "Something interesting on the horizon, satellite Dr. Wells. Take a look at this pattern." Miranda leaned over his shoulder, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern as she studied the screen. "That's not normal solar activity. The pattern is too consistent." My thoughts exactly. I'm recording the signal now. You should report this to Director Wallace immediately, she suggested. Jack's expression hardened. Wallace made it clear last time that security guards should stick to watching doors, not analyzing satellite data. Miranda frowned. That's ridiculous. Your experience is ancient history according to our director. Jack finished with a resigned smile. I'll document it and pass it through proper channels. Maybe someone will listen this time. After Miranda left, Jack continued monitoring the signal. As the hours passed, the pattern became clearer. Definitely artificial and definitely directed at Earth. By the end of his shift, he had compiled a detailed report with his analysis and recommendations. He placed it in Director Wallace's inbox, knowing it would likely be ignored like his previous reports. What he didn't know was that this particular report would change everything. The following morning, Jack arrived at work to find the facility in a state of controlled chaos. Additional security personnel patrolled the perimeter, and several black government vehicles were parked outside the administrative building. What's going on? Jack asked Thomas, another security guard who was hurrying past with a stack of access badges. Some kind of emergency meeting. Top brass from Washington arrived at dawn. Something about a satellite transmission. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. His report couldn't have generated this level of response, could it? As if on cue, a stern-faced woman in a crisp suit approached him. Mr. Reynolds, I'm Agent Carter, National Security Council. You're needed in the main conference room immediately. Jack followed her through the facility, noting the worried expressions of the scientists they passed. The main conference room, normally used for project presentations, had been transformed into a command center. Large screens displayed satellite imagery and data streams. Around the table sat Director Wallace, several military officials Jack didn't recognize, and at the head of the table a face Jack knew well from news broadcasts, the President of the United States. Director Wallace looked up as Jack entered, his expression a mixture of surprise and thinly veiled annoyance. Reynolds explained to the president what you found yesterday. All eyes turned to Jack. For a brief moment, he felt the familiar weight of command on his shoulders, a feeling he had missed for long years. He straightened his back and approached the table with military precision. Mr. President, at approximately 15:30 yesterday, I detected an anomalous signal being received by our Horizon deep space satellite. The pattern was artificial in nature, exhibiting characteristics consistent with an encoded message. Jack moved to one of the screens, bringing up his recorded data. The signal originated from beyond our solar system, but was specifically directed at Earth. The president studied him with intense focus. And you recognize this pattern because of your experience commanding the Defiant mission. It wasn't a question. Jack nodded, surprised that the president was familiar with his background. What Colonel Reynolds discovered, interjected a general sitting near the president, was the first stage of a communication protocol. Overnight, the signal intensified and evolved into this. The central screen changed to display a complex series of mathematical equations and geometric patterns that Jack immediately recognized as a universal communication attempt, similar to methods Earth scientists had theorized for contacting alien civilizations. We've deciphered part of the message, continued the general. It's a first contact protocol from a species calling themselves the Solarians. And they're not just sending a greeting, they're announcing their arrival. Their ship will enter our solar system within 48 hours. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was about to make official first contact with an alien civilization. There's more, said Director Wallace, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. The latter part of the message contains what appears to be an accusation. They reference an incident from 5 years ago, the destruction of what they call a sacred moon in the Epsilon Eridani system. Jack felt the blood drain from his face. Epsilon Eridani, the site of the Defiant's last mission, the mission that had ended in disaster, the mission that had cost him his crew, his rank, and his reputation. The president's gaze locked onto Jack. Colonel Reynolds, you're the only survivor of that mission. The official report states that the Defiant was testing a new propulsion system when you encountered an unexpected spatial anomaly that resulted in an explosion. Is that accurate? Jack's throat felt dry. For 5 years, he had carried the weight of that day. The official story had been crafted to protect certain classified elements of the mission. But now, faced with potential first contact and possible alien hostility, the truth needed to come out. No, sir, that's not entirely accurate. The words felt like rocks in his mouth. The Defiant was testing a new weapons system, a gravitational disruptor designed to disable enemy vessels without destruction. During the test, we targeted a small asteroid, but the weapon's yield was significantly higher than anticipated. The gravitational wave expanded beyond our calculations and impacted a nearby moon, causing its destruction. The revelation sent ripples of murmurs through the room. The president remained stoic. We had no indication that the moon was anything other than a natural satellite, Jack continued. There were no signs of artificial structures or life forms in our scans. Well, apparently it held significant importance to these Solarians, the president said, because their message specifically demands justice for what they called the moon desecrator. And based on the coordinates and timestamp, they're referring to you, Colonel Reynolds. Jack absorbed this with the steady composure of a man who had faced death before. What exactly are they demanding, sir? Director Wallace pushed a tablet across the table. Jack read the translated message, his expression remaining carefully neutral despite the growing knot in his stomach. They want me to stand trial for the destruction of their sacred moon, he summarized for the others. They're threatening global consequences if Earth refuses to comply. That's the diplomatic way of putting it, the general interjected. Their actual message states that they will cleanse the Earth of human infestation if we don't hand you over. The weight of billions of lives settled on Jack's shoulders. He had dedicated his life to protecting others from his earliest days as a young lieutenant in Desert Storm to his final mission aboard the Defiant. Even his mundane job as a security guard was in his mind about keeping people safe. Then there's no decision to make, Jack said firmly. I'll go. It's not that simple, Colonel, the president replied. We don't know anything about these Solarians or their concept of justice. This could be a suicide mission. With respect, sir, it's better than the alternative. I won't be responsible for bringing an alien war to Earth. The president studied Jack thoughtfully. Your service record speaks to your character, Colonel. Desert Storm peacekeeping missions in the Middle East, the International Space Station, Crisis of '09. You've never shied away from putting yourself on the line. He turned to the others in the room. I want options beyond simply handing over an American hero to an unknown alien species. We have 48 hours. As the meeting continued, plans were formulated for various scenarios. Jack remained silent, already having made his decision. Whatever the official response would be, he would ensure he was on that alien ship, willingly or otherwise. Too many had died under his command already. He wouldn't add billions more to that count. The Solarian ship arrived exactly when they said it would. It entered Earth's orbit with impossible speed, then stopped with equally impossible precision. Unlike the sleek utilitarian designs of human spacecraft, the Solarian vessel resembled a massive crystalline structure that caught and refracted sunlight in dazzling patterns. It dwarfed the International Space Station, stretching over a mile in length. Global panic was barely contained as governments worldwide scrambled to present a unified response. News networks broadcast continuous coverage, religious leaders offered varying interpretations, and military forces around the world went to their highest alert status. Jack watched the footage from a secure military facility where he had been transported following the initial meeting. The president had authorized a diplomatic mission. A small delegation would journey to the Solarian ship to negotiate terms. Jack would be part of that delegation along with a military escort and diplomatic specialists. As he packed the few personal items he was permitted to bring, Jack found himself strangely calm. Perhaps it was the military training, or perhaps it was the knowledge that at last he might find some resolution for the guilt he'd carried since the Defiant. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Time to go, Colonel, said a young Air Force lieutenant. The transport leaves in 30 minutes. The launch facility was locked down with concentric rings of security, keeping the press and public at bay. The spacecraft waiting on the pad wasn't the advanced diplomatic vessel Jack had expected, but rather a modified military transport, practical and defensible if things went south. As he boarded, he met the rest of the delegation. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a tough, no-nonsense military officer with experience in high-stress negotiations during Middle Eastern conflicts. Dr. Alan Chen, an aging xenolinguist and cultural anthropologist who had spent his career developing theoretical frameworks for communicating with alien intelligence. And a 6-person security team all armed with conventional weapons that Jack suspected would be useless against a civilization capable of the technology displayed by the Solarian ship. Colonel Reynolds, Sarah extended her hand as Jack strapped into his seat. I've studied your record. It's an honor to serve with you, sir. The honor's mine, Colonel Mitchell, though I suspect our mission may be more ceremonial than anything else. Jack glanced at the security team. Those weapons won't make a difference if the Solarians decide to be hostile. They're more for our benefit than as an actual deterrent, Sarah admitted quietly. Gives the men something to hold on to. Dr. Chen settled into the seat across from Jack, his weathered face etched with equal measures of excitement and trepidation. Colonel Reynolds, I must say this is extraordinary. First contact, I prepared for this possibility my entire career, but I never truly believed it would happen during my lifetime. Jack gave him a measured smile. Let's hope your preparations serve us well, Doctor. Oh, I've studied every theoretical framework for cross-species communication. I've even developed my own algorithmic approach to cultural translation based on universal mathematical principles. Chen rambled enthusiastically. Though I must admit their mastery of our language in their initial communication is rather concerning. It suggests they've been studying us for quite some time. That's what worries me, Jack agreed. They know a lot more about us than we do about them. The craft rumbled beneath them as the engines fired up. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, prepare for launch in T-minus 60 seconds. As the countdown proceeded, Jack closed his eyes briefly. He thought of his crew from the Defiant, wondering if what he was about to do would in some way honor their memory. The craft shuddered violently as it broke free from Earth's gravity, accelerating toward the waiting alien vessel. The journey to the Solarian ship took just under 3 hours. As they approached, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. Crystalline structures extended from a central core like branches of an impossibly perfect tree, each catching and reflecting sunlight in hypnotic patterns. My God, breathed Dr. Chen, pressing his face to the viewport. It's beautiful. A docking bay opened seamlessly along one of the crystal branches, emitting a soft blue glow that seemed to guide their craft inside. The human pilot relinquished control as some unseen force took over, guiding them to a gentle landing. I've lost all systems, the pilot announced, a note of panic in his voice. Engines, communications, everything just went dark. Stay calm, Jack ordered. They've likely used some form of electromagnetic dampening, standard procedure when allowing unknown vessels to dock. Though he knew there was nothing standard about this situation. A seam appeared in the crystalline wall before them, widening to reveal a corridor bathed in the same soft blue light as the docking bay. At the entrance stood 3 figures. The Solarians were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shimmer with a subtle, silvery glow. Their features were almost human-like, but with larger almond-shaped eyes that contained no visible pupils or irises, just swirling pools of deep blue. They wore no recognizable clothing, but rather seemed adorned with the same crystalline material as their ship, flowing around their bodies in elegant formations. Earth delegation, spoke the central figure, its mouth not quite syncing with the words, suggesting some form of translation technology. You will follow. Dr. Chen stepped forward eagerly, but Jack placed a restraining hand on his arm. I'll take point, Doctor. Turning to the Solarians, he addressed them directly. I am Colonel Jack Reynolds of Earth. I believe I am the one you're looking for. The Solarians regarded him with those unsettling, pupilless eyes. The desecrator, confirmed the central figure. You will be judged for your crimes. The others are unnecessary. The others are our diplomatic representatives, Jack countered firmly. They come to ensure proper understanding between our species. The Solarians conferred silently among themselves, then the leader nodded once. They may accompany, but their presence changes nothing. Justice will be served. As they followed the aliens through the crystalline corridors, Jack maintained a soldier's awareness of their surroundings. The ship's interior was unlike any human vessel. There were no visible control panels, no obvious technology. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with soft light that responded to the Solarians' presence. Dr. Chen couldn't contain his scientific curiosity. Your ship is remarkable. The integration of organic and technological elements suggests a fundamentally different approach to engineering than human science has pursued. The Solarians did not respond, continuing their silent procession through the winding corridors. They're not here for a cultural exchange, Doctor, Sarah whispered. Stay focused on the mission. Eventually, they reached what appeared to be a central chamber, a vast dome-shaped room where hundreds of Solarians stood on tiered platforms surrounding a central dais. The crowd fell silent as Jack and the delegation entered, all those pupil-less eyes fixing on them with unreadable expressions. On a raised platform at the far end of the chamber sat a figure different from the others. While still recognizably Solarian, this individual was adorned with more elaborate crystalline formations that seemed to form a crown-like structure around their head. Jack immediately recognized the signifiers of authority. Every culture, it seemed, had its way of marking leadership. "The Queen," whispered Dr. Chen in awe. The Solarian who had led them through the ship now addressed the chamber, speaking in their native language. A series of musical tones and clicks that no human throat could replicate. The translation came through a moment later from some unseen source. "Honored sovereign of the crystalline dominion, I present the human known as Jack Reynolds, the desecrator of the sacred moon of ancestors. He comes to face justice for his crimes against our people." The Queen's gaze settled on Jack, her expression as unreadable as all Solarians. But Jack felt an intensity in that look that transcended species barriers. "Jack Reynolds," she spoke, her voice somehow both melodious and sharp. "Do you understand why you have been brought before us?" Jack stepped forward, standing tall despite the weight of the moment. "I understand that 5 years ago, a vessel under my command was responsible for the destruction of a moon in the Epsilon Eridani system. If this was sacred to your people, I offer my sincere condolences. However, the destruction was an accident. We had no knowledge of your civilization or the moon's significance." A murmur rippled through the assembled Solarians. "Ignorance does not absolve responsibility," the Queen stated. "That moon housed the crystalline records of our ancestors, 10,000 years of history, art, and knowledge, gone in an instant because of your weapons test." Jack absorbed this with a growing sense of horror. Not just a sacred site, but a repository of their entire cultural history. No wonder they viewed it as an unforgivable crime. "Your Highness," interjected Chen, stepping forward despite Sarah's attempt to hold him back. "If I may, humans have a concept called mens rea, guilty mind. It's a fundamental principle of justice that true crime requires both a harmful act and the intention to harm. Colonel Reynolds had no such intention." "Your human concepts of justice are irrelevant here," replied one of the officials standing near the Queen. "The desecrator must pay the price for what was lost." "And what exactly is that price?" asked Jack directly. The Queen rose from her seat, her crystalline adornments catching the light. "Our laws are absolute. The punishment for destroying a sacred site is death." The human delegation erupted in protest, but Jack remained calm, his eyes locked with the Queen's. "However," she continued, silencing the chamber with a raised hand, "there is an alternative. Our seers have studied the convergence patterns, and they believe there may be a path that serves both justice and the greater harmony." "What alternative?" Jack asked, a soldier's wariness in his voice. "A binding," replied the Queen. "You would be bound to our people through me. A union that would symbolically repair what was broken. A marriage in your terms." Shock rippled through both the human delegation and the Solarian assembly. "Sovereign," objected one of her advisors. "This is unprecedented. A union with a lesser species." "Silence, Zorn," commanded the Queen. Her gaze never left Jack. "The alternative is war. The Council of Elders has already authorized cleansing measures against Earth if justice is not served." Dr. Chen whispered urgently to Jack, "Colonel, this is extraordinary. Marriage as diplomatic resolution has historical precedent on Earth, but I never imagined." "I understand, Doctor." Jack cut him off quietly. He addressed the Queen directly. "May I request time to consult with my delegation?" The Queen inclined her head slightly. "You have until the 3rd rotation. Then you will decide, union or retribution." As they were escorted to quarters prepared for them, the human delegation buzzed with urgent discussions. The rooms they were given were clearly adapted from Solarian designs in an attempt to accommodate human physiology. The furniture too tall, the lighting too bright, the temperature too cool. "This is insanity," declared Sarah once they were alone. "They're asking you to marry their queen as punishment for an accident. It has to be a trap." "Or a profound cultural gesture," countered Dr. Chen. "Many Earth cultures have used marriage alliances to prevent war and forge peace between hostile groups. The symbolism is actually quite elegant, a destructive act repaid with a creative union." Jack paced the room, his military mind analyzing the situation from all angles. "What matters is whether it will truly prevent war. If I refuse and they attack Earth, we have to contact Home Command," Sarah insisted. "This goes way beyond our mission parameters." Their communication devices had been rendered useless by whatever technology had disabled their ship's systems. The Solarians had provided what appeared to be a communication crystal, but none of them trusted it enough to use it for sensitive discussions. "I need to know more about their culture, their true intentions," Jack said finally. "Doctor, what's your assessment of the Queen? Did you notice anything unusual about her compared to the others?" Chen nodded eagerly. Yes, her eyes. They have a violet tinge, unlike the others. And the way the advisors reacted to her suggestion indicates internal political divisions. I suspect the Queen may not be universally supported by her people, which makes this whole situation even more dangerous, Sarah pointed out. If she's offering this alternative against the wishes of her advisors, what happens if they decide to override her? Jack's years of command experience told him they needed more information before making any decisions, but their position as virtual prisoners made that difficult. He moved to the window-like aperture in their quarters, gazing out at the earth below, so small and vulnerable from this distance. The hours passed tensely as they debated options and scenarios. Eventually, Sarah and Chen retreated to their individual chambers, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. He found himself thinking of his old crew, wondering what advice they would offer him now. The weight of responsibility was familiar to him. He had carried it through war zones and space missions, but never had the stakes been quite so high. Sleep eluded him. In the quiet hours of what his body clock told him was early morning, Jack heard a soft sound near the entrance to his chamber. He tensed, years of combat training kicking in as he prepared to defend himself if necessary. A seam appeared in the crystalline wall, but instead of the guards, he expected a slender figure slip through. The Queen herself, without her ceremonial adornments, looking smaller and less imposing than she had in the great chamber. Jack rose to his feet, surprise momentarily overtaking his caution. "Your Highness, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No titles here. I am Lyra." She moved further into the room, and Jack noticed how she glanced nervously at the entrance like someone afraid of being caught. Up close, he could see that her eyes were indeed different, swirling pools of violet rather than the deep blue of other Solarians. "Why are you here?" Jack asked, keeping his distance. "Because I needed to see you alone, away from the Council's watching eyes." She moved to the window, gazing out at Earth. "Your world is beautiful, so full of water and life. It's worth protecting," Jack said simply. Lyra turned to face him. "I know, just as my people are worth protecting. That is why I propose the union. As punishment for my actions." "No," she said, surprising him. "As salvation for both our species." Jack studied her carefully, decades of reading people in high-stress situations, helping him detect the subtle signs of tension in her posture, the genuine concern in her strange eyes. "I don't understand." Lyra hesitated, then spoke in a rush, as if afraid she might lose her courage. "I am defective by Solarian standards. I can sense emotions, feel them from others. It is considered a dangerous weakness in our society where control and logic are paramount." Jack's military mind immediately grasped the strategic implications. "That's why your eyes are different, and why the Council seems to oppose you." She nodded. "I have been hidden away for most of my life, considered an embarrassment. When my predecessor died without an heir, I was the only one of royal lineage remaining. The Council had no choice but to elevate me, but they have fought my authority at every turn. And now they want war with Earth. Yes, General Krell and his faction have been advocating for expansion for decades. The destruction of the sacred moon gave them the pretext they needed." She took a step closer to Jack. "I can sense you, Jack Reynolds. Your grief for your lost crew, your determination to protect your people, your guilt over the moon's destruction. You are not what my advisors claim, not a monster or a desecrator." Jack felt exposed, as if she had seen directly into his soul. In his long military career, he had learned to hide his emotions, to project strength, even in moments of doubt. But before this alien queen with her strange empathic abilities, such masks were useless. "If what you're saying is true, then this marriage proposal is my attempt to prevent war," she confirmed. "A union between our species would make military action politically impossible, at least long enough for me to consolidate my position against Krell's faction. Why tell me this in secret? Why not make this case publicly? Because admitting to using my empathic abilities would only strengthen those who consider me unfit to rule." She gazed at him intently. "I am taking an enormous risk trusting you with this, Jack Reynolds. But I sensed something in you, an honor that transcends species. Am I wrong?" Jack considered her words carefully. Throughout his career, he had faced impossible choices, moments where there were no good options, only less devastating ones. This felt like another such moment. "No, you're not wrong, but I need to know one thing. Will this union truly protect Earth? No hidden clauses, no future claims against my people." "You have my word," Lyra said solemnly. "The treaty will be binding and permanent. Earth will be recognized as a sovereign ally of the Solarian Dominion, protected against any aggression. Jack made his decision, then the weight of billions of lives, making the choice clear, despite its personal cost. Then I accept your proposal, Lyra of the Solarians, not as punishment, but as the foundation of peace between our worlds. Relief washed over her features. Thank you, Jack Reynolds of Earth. She moved toward the hidden entrance. I must return before my absence is noticed. The ceremonial binding will take place after the third rotation as stated. Lyra, Jack called softly as she reached the door. Your empathic abilities, they're not a defect. On Earth, understanding others' emotions is considered a strength, especially in a leader. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Perhaps our peoples have more to teach each other than the Council realizes. After she departed, Jack stood at the window for a long time, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the deserts of Iraq to the depths of space, from decorated colonel to disgraced security guard, and now to reluctant diplomat with the fate of humanity in his hands. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same courage and determination that had carried him through decades of service. Not for glory or redemption, but because it was the right thing to do. Because billions of lives depended on his choice. As the lights of Earth's cities twinkled below, Jack Reynolds prepared himself to become the first human to marry an alien queen. The ceremony was scheduled for what the Solarians called the third rotation, approximately 30 Earth hours after Jack's secret meeting with Queen Lyra. In the interim, tensions ran high among the human delegation. Once Jack informed them of his decision, reactions had been predictably divided. This is unprecedented, Dr. Chen kept repeating, oscillating between academic fascination and personal concern. The first human-alien diplomatic marriage in history. The anthropological implications alone are meaningless if it's a trap, Sarah cut in sharply. She had been pacing their shared quarters for hours, her military training making her suspicious of the entire arrangement. Colonel, with all due respect, we have no way to verify the Queen's claims about the protection treaty. For all we know, once you're bound to her, they could still attack Earth. Jack stood by the viewing portal Earth, a blue jewel against the blackness of space. His reflection showed the face of a man who had seen too much war, too much death. The lines around his eyes had deepened over the years. His hair had gone from pepper to salt, but his gaze remained unwavering. I've spent my life making judgment calls, Colonel Mitchell. In the desert, during storm, in the skies over Kosovo, aboard the Defiant. When you've been in command long enough, you develop an instinct. He turned to face her. I believe Queen Lyra is sincere. Based on one clandestine meeting, Sarah challenged. Based on what she risked by coming to me, Jack replied calmly. She exposed vulnerabilities within her own government, revealed her personal struggles. That's not something manipulators typically do. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. It aligns with historical precedents of rulers caught between personal conviction and state policy. Think of Catherine the Great's secret correspondence with Voltaire or Emperor Guangxu's reform attempts against the Dowager Empress's wishes. Sarah looked unconvinced but stopped pacing. I've sent our report through the communication crystal. If it works as they claim, command should have our situation assessment by now. It doesn't change my decision, Jack said firmly, but I appreciate your concern, Colonel Mitchell. Keep your eyes open during the ceremony. If anything seems off, get back to the ship and warn Earth. As the designated hour approached, Solarian attendants arrived with formal attire for the ceremony. The garments were clearly of human design, suggesting the Solarians had studied Earth culture extensively. Jack was provided with what resembled a formal military dress uniform, though adorned with crystalline elements that echoed Solarian aesthetic sensibilities. They've been watching us for some time, Jack observed as he adjusted the unfamiliar clothing. This level of detail about our customs doesn't come from casual observation. The question is why, Sarah murmured, examining her own ceremonial attire. Why study us so closely only to threaten global destruction over an accident? Perhaps not everyone among the Solarians shares the same agenda. Dr. Chen suggested, struggling with the complex fastenings of his ceremonial robe. Queen Lyra implied as much, didn't she? When they were ready, a contingent of Solarian guards arrived to escort them to the Great Hall. The journey through the crystalline corridors felt longer this time, the path more circuitous. Jack mentally mapped their route, a habit from decades of military operations. Always know your escape path. The Great Hall had been transformed. Where before it had been austere and intimidating, now it glittered with what appeared to be ceremonial decorations. Crystalline formations that caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Hundreds of Solarians lined the tiered platforms, their silver skin and pupil-less eyes creating an otherworldly tableau. At the center of the hall stood a raised dais surrounded by what resembled a circle of frozen flames, crystal formations that pulsed with inner light. Beside it waited an elder Solarian adorned with more elaborate crystalline growths than the others, clearly some form of religious or ceremonial leader. The sovereign harmonizer, Dr. Chen whispered, having apparently been briefed on Solarian ceremonial roles, equivalent to a high priest in our terminology. As they approached the dais, a hush fell over the assembly. From the opposite side of the hall entered Queen Lyra, and Jack found himself momentarily stunned. She wore a flowing garment that seemed composed of living crystal, shifting and flowing around her form like water made solid. Her crown-like adornments were more elaborate than before, framing her face and highlighting those unusual violet eyes. Jack was directed to stand opposite her on the dais. Up close, he could see subtle signs of tension in her posture. This was as momentous for her as it was for him, perhaps more so given the political currents she navigated. The sovereign harmonizer began speaking in the musical language of the Solarians. Though Jack couldn't understand the words, the cadence suggested a formal ritual, ancient and unchanging. Dr. Chen stood nearby, whispering occasional translations. He speaks of harmony between disparate elements, the balancing of cosmic forces, the joining of separate paths into one journey. Jack maintained his military bearing, back straight, face composed. His eyes occasionally met Lyra's, and in those moments he sensed her gratitude beneath the formal mask she presented to her people. The ceremony progressed with ritualistic precision. Crystal vessels were presented containing what appeared to be luminescent liquid. Jack and Lyra each drank from one, then exchanged vessels to drink from the other. The liquid tasted like nothing Jack had experienced, somehow both sweet and sharp, leaving a tingling sensation that spread from his throat throughout his body. A binding elixir, Dr. Chen murmured, symbolic in most Earth cultures, but who knows what properties it might have here. Next came the physical binding, a cord of crystalline material that the harmonizer wound around their joined hands. It felt cool against Jack's skin at first, then warm to match his body temperature exactly. Throughout the ritual, Jack was aware of the divided reactions among the assembled Solarians. Some watched with what seemed like approval, others with barely concealed disgust. Near the Queen's platform stood a tall, battle-scarred Solarian whose rigid posture screamed military to Jack's experienced eye. This, he suspected, was General Krell, the leader of the war faction Lyra had mentioned. The final stage of the ceremony involved the exchange of what Dr. Chen called essence words, sacred promises binding the participants. Lyra spoke first, her words translated for the human delegation. I, Lyra, sovereign of the crystalline dominion, join my path to yours. Where there was division, let there be unity. Where there was destruction, let there be creation. Through this binding, our peoples find harmony. Jack had been provided his response carefully crafted to mirror Solarian ceremonial language while maintaining human diplomatic interests. He spoke clearly, his deep voice carrying through the vast chamber. I, Jack Reynolds of Earth, accept this joining of paths. I stand as bridge between worlds, guardian of understanding. Through this binding, I pledge to honor the harmony between our peoples and protect the peace we create today. The harmonizer raised his hands above them, and the crystalline cord around their hands glowed brilliantly for a moment before seeming to dissolve into their skin, leaving a faint, shimmering pattern on both their wrists. It is done, announced the harmonizer. The binding is complete. What the cosmos has joined, let no force divide. A musical tone reverberated through the chamber, apparently the Solarian equivalent of applause, but Jack noticed it came primarily from the lower tiers, where younger Solarians stood. The upper tiers, dominated by what appeared to be elder council members, remained silent. As the ceremony concluded, Lyra and Jack were led to a raised platform where they were to receive formal acknowledgments from the Solarian hierarchy. Jack noticed General Krell approaching, his movements precise and controlled military discipline, evident in every step. Sovereign, Krell addressed Lyra with a slight incline of his head, the bare minimum of respect required. To Jack, he offered nothing. The Council of Elders requests your presence for the ratification of the Earth Protection Treaty. The treaty has already been prepared, Lyra replied, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of command, despite its melodious quality. As we agreed, General. There have been adjustments deemed necessary by the Council, Krell stated, his pupil-less eyes briefly flicking to Jack. Mere formalities. Jack recognized a power play when he saw one. During Desert Storm, he'd witnessed enough political maneuvering among coalition forces to recognize the signs. Krell was trying to separate Lyra from her new human allies to force concessions. As Earth's representative, I should be present for any treaty discussions, Jack interjected, smoothly matching Krell's formal tone. Diplomatic protocol. Krell's expression remained unreadable, but a subtle tensing of his crystalline adornments suggested irritation. This is an internal Solarian matter. The treaty will be presented to your delegation once finalized. The treaty concerns Earth directly, Jack countered. And as consort to the sovereign, I believe Solarian law grants me certain privileges of presence. He had no idea if this was true, but the calculated gamble hit its mark. Krell's eyes narrowed slightly. You are surprisingly well informed about our customs for an outsider. Understanding brings harmony, Jack replied deliberately, using Solarian phraseology he had picked up during the ceremony. Isn't that your way? Before Krell could respond, Lyra intervened. My consort speaks wisely, General. He will accompany me to the council chambers. Her tone left no room for argument, despite the subtle power struggle playing out before them. Jack caught Sarah's eye in the crowd and gave her a slight nod, their prearranged signal that she should maintain vigilance while he was separated from the delegation. She returned the gesture almost imperceptibly. As Jack followed Lyra and Krell from the Great Hall, he felt the weight of countless alien gazes upon him. For a man who had once commanded space missions and led troops into battle, this was perhaps his most daring venture yet, walking into the political heart of an alien civilization with only his judgment and experience as weapons. The council chambers were located in what appeared to be the oldest section of the ship, where the crystalline architecture took on more angular, less organic forms. 12 elder Solarians sat in a semicircle on raised seats, their elaborate adornments in aged appearance, marking them as the highest authority in the Solarian hierarchy. The Council of Harmonic Oversight, Lyra explained quietly as they entered. Some have served for over 3 centuries. Jack absorbed this information with outward calm, though the implications of Solarian longevity raised numerous questions about their society and its development. If their leaders lived for centuries, how did their culture adapt to change? How did younger generations gain influence? The council session began with formal acknowledgments, but quickly turned to the matter at hand. An elder with particularly elaborate crystal formations that framed his head like a starburst addressed them. Sovereign Lyra, the binding ceremony has been completed according to tradition. However, the proposed Earth Protection Treaty contains provisions that the Council finds problematic. What provisions, Elder Thalos? Lyra asked, though her tone suggested she already anticipated the answer. The guarantee of complete military non-aggression against Earth, Thalos replied. Such an absolute commitment limits our options should future circumstances change. Jack recognized the diplomatic language of those seeking to preserve military options. He had heard similar arguments in NATO meetings and UN security briefings throughout his career. The non-aggression clause is the foundation of the agreement, Lyra stated firmly. It was the condition upon which Consort Reynolds agreed to the binding. Perhaps the human would accept a modified provision, suggested another elder, one that allows for defensive measures should Earth pose a threat to Solarian interests. Such vague terminology could justify any military action you chose to take, Jack pointed out, stepping forward. Years of international negotiations had taught him to identify such deliberately ambiguous language. The clause must remain absolute and unconditional. General Krell, who stood at the edge of the chamber, interjected. The human speaks out of turn. He has no standing in council matters. As my consort, he speaks with my voice, Lyra countered. And as Earth's representative, he speaks for his people. The council chamber fell silent as the elders exchanged glances. Jack recognized the silent communication of a group reassessing their strategy. Perhaps, Elder Thalos finally said, we should adjourn briefly to consider the sovereign's position. Refreshment will be provided in the antechamber. As the council members filed out, Jack and Lyra were left momentarily alone in the vast chamber. Even knowing they were likely still observed, Jack kept his voice low. They're stalling. Krell has something planned. I know, Lyra replied, barely moving her lips. My abilities sense great anticipation from him, barely contained excitement. Whatever it is, it will happen soon. We need to get back to my delegation, Jack said. Sarah and the security team should be prepared. There's a faster route through the memorial corridors, Lyra said. Follow my lead when I move. Before they could enact this plan, the chamber doors reopened. Instead of the council members, a contingent of Solarian guards entered, led by a stern-faced officer. Sovereign urgent reports from the observation deck. Unusual energy signatures have been detected near the human craft. Lyra exchanged a quick glance with Jack. What kind of energy signatures? Weapons activation sovereign. The humans appear to be preparing to launch an attack. Jack kept his expression neutral, despite knowing the accusation was false. Their transport vessel had been completely powered down upon docking. This was the pretext Krell had been waiting for. That's impossible, Jack stated firmly. Our ship's systems were disabled upon arrival. This is a fabrication. The officer's expression remained impassive. The evidence has been verified by General Krell himself. The Council has ordered security measures to be implemented immediately. I am the Sovereign, Lyra said, drawing herself up. No security measures are to be implemented without my direct order. The Council has invoked the emergency sovereignty provision, the officer replied. Given the evidence of human hostility, Command Authority has temporarily transferred to the Defense Directorate. In that moment, Jack understood exactly what was happening. A military coup disguised as a security response. He had seen similar tactics used by dictators on Earth, creating false crises to justify power grabs. We need to return to the Great Hall immediately, Jack insisted. My delegation can verify our ship's status. All humans are being secured for their own protection, the officer stated. Please, Sovereign Consort, follow us to the safety chambers. Jack recognized the euphemism for what it was. Detention. They were being placed under house arrest while Krell consolidated power and prepared for whatever action he planned against Earth. I insist on seeing the evidence myself, Lyra demanded. Bring it to my private analysis chamber. The officer hesitated, clearly caught between contradicting the Sovereign and following Krell's orders. I will request the evidence files be transferred there, Sovereign, but I must escort you to safety immediately. As they were led through the quarters, Jack noted the increased military presence throughout the ship. Guards stood at intersections where none had been before, and the ambient lighting had shifted from peaceful blue to a more alert amber. The Solarian equivalent of heightened security status was clearly in effect. They were brought not to the royal chambers, but to a smaller, more secure set of rooms with conspicuously thicker walls. As soon as the doors sealed behind them, Jack turned to Lyra. This is a coup. Krell is using our marriage as cover for whatever he's really planned. Lyra moved to what appeared to be a control panel integrated into the crystalline wall. He's been planning this for longer than you realize. The Sacred Moon's destruction simply provided the pretext he needed. Her fingers danced across the crystal surface. He's locked us out of the main systems, but there are older pathways he doesn't know about. Can you contact anyone loyal to you? Jack asked, falling naturally into crisis management mode, his military training taking over. I'm trying to reach Maris, my chief counselor. She has influence with the younger faction. Lyra continued manipulating the crystal panel. There, I've established a secure connection to the Royal Guard captain. He remains loyal. While she communicated with her supporters, Jack examined their surroundings, assessing the space with a soldier's eye. The room was luxurious, but clearly designed for containment. No windows, one door, and what appeared to be surveillance crystals embedded in the ceiling. We need to warn my delegation, Jack said after Lyra finished her communication. Sarah and the security team can defend themselves if they know what's coming, but they need warning. The human quarters are being watched, Lyra replied, but there's another way. She moved to what appeared to be a decorative panel in the wall and pressed a sequence of crystals. The panel slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. The ancient ones who built this vessel included secret pathways for the royal lineage. I've used them all my life to escape those who despise my difference. Jack nodded immediately, grasping the strategic value. Can you get us to my delegation? Yes, but we must move quickly. Krell will soon realize the containment isn't as complete as he believes. They slipped into the hidden passage, the panel sliding shut behind them. The corridor was narrow and dimly lit by faint bioluminescent patterns in the walls. Lyra led the way with the confidence of long familiarity, while Jack followed closely, mentally mapping their path. These passages run throughout the ancient sections of the ship, Lyra explained as they moved. When I was young, before my empathic abilities were discovered, I was told they were built as emergency evacuation routes for the royal family. Later, I learned they were created to allow the sovereign to observe the court unseen, to know who could be trusted. And they became your sanctuary, Jack observed. Yes. When my abilities emerged and I became an embarrassment to my family, these passages became my world. I could watch life in the palace without being seen, learn without being judged. The political implications weren't lost on Jack. So you've been observing court politics undetected for years. You probably know more about what's really happening in your government than anyone realizes. Lyra glanced back at him, a hint of surprise in those violet eyes. You understand quickly, Jack Reynolds. Yes, I've watched Krell's faction growing in power, gathering supporters, planning. But I never anticipated he would move so boldly. What's his endgame? Jack asked as they navigated a junction in the passages. Why risk war with Earth? Resources, Lyra replied grimly. Your solar system is rich in materials we need, particularly the crystalline compounds found in your asteroid belt. We could trade for them, establish mutual cooperation, but Krell believes conquest is more efficient. And the sacred moon, was its destruction really the catalyst for all this? Lyra hesitated. The moon of ancestors was sacred, yes, but... She lowered her voice further. There are rumors among the oldest royal archivists that it contained more than just historical records. Some believe it housed weapons technology from our ancient past, technology deemed too dangerous to keep within reach. Jack processed this revelation with growing concern, and Krell wants that technology. He believes fragments survived the destruction. He's been searching the debris field in secret for years. Then our accidental weapons test might have given him exactly what he wanted, Jack concluded, a pretext for war and access to forbidden weapons. They fell silent as they approached what Lyra indicated was an exit point near the human quarters. She paused, placing her hand on the wall and closing her eyes. I sense tension, alertness. Guards outside your delegation's quarters, but also determination, concern. Your Colonel Mitchell is preparing for trouble. Jack nodded approvingly. Sarah was a good officer. She'd recognize the signs even without explicit warning. We need a distraction, he said, thinking tactically. Something to draw the guards away long enough for us to make contact. Lyra considered this, then moved to another section of the passage wall. There's an environmental control nexus for that section nearby. She manipulated something Jack couldn't see, and suddenly alarms blared in the distance. Atmospheric pressure warning. The guards will have to investigate. Standard protocol. Sure enough, they heard commotion outside the hidden passage as the guards responded to the apparent emergency. Once the sounds receded, Lyra activated the hidden door. It opened into an empty corridor just outside the human delegation's quarters. Jack moved quickly to the door using a specific knock pattern he had established with Sarah as an emergency signal. The door slid open immediately, revealing Sarah with her sidearm drawn, the rest of the security team positioned defensively around the room. Colonel, Sarah acknowledged, lowering her weapon slightly, but remaining alert. We were beginning to think you'd been detained. We were, Jack replied, ushering Lyra inside and securing the door behind them. General Krell is attempting a coup. He's created a false security crisis to take control. Dr. Chen looked up from where he had been examining what appeared to be Solarian communication devices. I knew it. The ceremony was too accommodating, too perfect. Classic misdirection. What's his plan? Sarah asked, directly addressing both Jack and Lyra. To her credit, she showed no surprise at the Queen's presence or any hesitation in treating her as an ally. Krell intends to attack Earth, Lyra explained. He's been planning this for years, using the Sacred Moon's destruction as his justification. He's disabled our communication with Home Command, Sarah reported. We managed to get one message through before the system went dark. They know about the marriage alliance, but nothing about this coup. Jack moved to the center of the room, his command presence naturally gathering everyone's attention. We need to act quickly. Queen Lyra has loyal supporters, but Krell controls the military. Our priority is to warn Earth and prevent any aggressive action. How? Asked one of the security team members. Our ship is locked down and we're outnumbered at least 1,000 to 1. We don't need to defeat Krell's entire force, Jack replied, drawing on decades of strategic thinking. We just need to expose his deception to enough of the Solarian leadership to create doubt. Lyra, can you access ship-wide communication systems from here? She examined the room's crystal interface panel. Not directly, but I can reach my private communication nexus through the hidden passages. From there, I could broadcast to the entire vessel. Good. We need evidence of Krell's true intentions, something concrete that even his supporters can't ignore. Dr. Chen spoke up. During the ceremony, I noticed Krell and several officers accessing what appeared to be secure data terminals. If they were coordinating coup activities, there might be records in the system. Lyra nodded. The command nexus records all high-level military communications. If we could access those logs... Can we get to this command nexus? Jack asked. It's heavily guarded in the military section of the ship, Lyra replied. But there's another way. General Krell maintains a private office near the training facilities. He would have access terminals there, and it might be less heavily guarded. Jack considered their options. We need two teams, one to access Krell's office and obtain the evidence, one to reach the communication nexus to broadcast it. I should lead the team to the nexus, Lyra said. The systems will respond to my royal authentication. And I'll lead the team to Krell's office, Jack decided. Military to military. I know how commanders think where they'd keep sensitive information. Sarah stepped forward. With respect, Colonel, you're too valuable to risk. I should go to Krell's office. My special operations training makes me better suited for infiltration. Jack recognized the logic in her argument. Agreed. Take two of your team. Dr. Chen, you'll go with the Queen to help interpret any technical information for broadcast. The scientist looked startled, but nodded his agreement. I'll do my best. What about your injury? Jack asked Lyra, noticing how she occasionally favored her left shoulder, the one injured during the garden attack. It will not impede me, she replied with quiet dignity. I have endured worse in my struggle to lead my people. As they finalized their plans, a subtle vibration ran through the ship. Barely noticeable, but Jack's years in space had attuned him to such changes. The engines, he said, looking at Lyra, they've increased power. Her violet eyes widened slightly. We're changing position. Krell must be moving the ship into attack formation. How long until they could launch weapons against Earth? Sarah asked. From optimal firing position, minutes only. Lyra's expression hardened. We must move now. They divided into their teams, exchanging communication devices. Lyra had adapted to work through the hidden passage network. As Sarah's team prepared to depart, Jack pulled her aside. Colonel Mitchell, if this goes sideways... I know, sir, she replied with the quiet confidence of a soldier who understood the stakes. If we can't stop the attack, we find a way to warn Earth, whatever the cost. Jack nodded, the unspoken understanding between them clear. They were prepared to sacrifice themselves if necessary to protect their world. As Sarah's team slipped into the hidden passage, Jack turned to find Lyra watching him with those perceptive violet eyes. You care deeply for your people, she observed. As you do for yours, Jack replied. That's why we're both here, isn't it? To protect them from those who would use power selfishly. A subtle smile curved Lyra's lips. Perhaps our species are not so different, after all. Different methods, same principles, Jack agreed. Now let's go stop a war. As they entered the hidden passages once more, Jack felt the familiar calm of decisive action settling over him. Throughout his long career, from the deserts of Iraq to the vacuum of space, he had faced impossible odds before. This was just one more mission with the highest stakes imaginable, the survival of Earth itself. The fate of two worlds now rested on their ability to outmaneuver General Krell before his forces could strike. The clock was ticking, and somewhere in the vast crystalline ship, the general was preparing to launch an attack that would devastate Jack's homeworld. Not on my watch, Jack thought grimly as they hurried through the dimly lit passages. Not while I still breathe. The hidden passages within the Solarian ship formed a labyrinthine network that Jack might have found disorienting without Lyra's confident guidance. Their small team moved swiftly through the narrow corridors, the crystalline walls pulsing with dim bioluminescence that cast everything in an ethereal blue glow. The communication nexus is 3 levels up, Lyra explained as they navigated a junction. These passages were designed to give the royal family escape routes from any location on the ship, a prudent design feature. Jack observed, his military mind appreciating the strategic thinking. How many people know about these passages? Very few. Knowledge of them is restricted to the royal lineage and their most trusted advisors. A shadow crossed Lyra's face. My isolation had one advantage. I've had decades to explore every pathway in solitude. I know routes that even the royal archivists have forgotten. Dr. Chen, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. Your Majesty, I've been studying the architectural patterns of these passages. They appear to follow mathematical principles similar to Earth's sacred geometry, the Fibonacci sequence specifically. Lyra nodded without slowing her pace. Our ancestral builders believed that certain mathematical patterns connected to the fundamental structure of consciousness. These pathways were designed not just for physical movement, but for spiritual alignment. Jack, ever practical, kept his focus on their mission. How much farther to the communication nexus? Not far. Lyra suddenly stopped, pressing her hand against the wall. Her violet eyes unfocused momentarily as she extended her empathic senses. Guards, several of them just beyond the next junction. Their emotions are alert vigilant. Krell must have realized you escaped containment, Jack surmised. He'll have security teams searching the conventional corridors. Can we go around them? Dr. Chen asked nervously. Lyra considered briefly. Yes, but it will add time. There's an alternative route through the ceremonial section. Jack made a quick, tactical calculation. Earth's safety against delay. Take us through the alternative route. Better to arrive intact than not at all. They backtracked and descended a narrow spiral pathway that seemed to twist impossibly through the ship's structure. The crystalline material changed subtly here, becoming more translucent, almost mist-like in places. The meditation chambers, Lyra explained softly. Few come here now. The ancient practices have fallen out of favor with the modern council. They emerged into a vast dome-shaped chamber, filled with floating crystalline structures that resembled Earth's wind chimes, though these moved with purpose, creating complex three-dimensional patterns in response to their presence. The floor beneath them seemed to ripple like water, though remained solid underfoot. Remarkable, breathed Dr. Chen, momentarily forgetting their urgent mission. The crystalline structures appear to be responding to our bioelectric fields. They are memory crystals, Lyra explained as she led them along the edge of the chamber. They record emotional states and preserve them for future meditation. My ancestors believed that experiencing the emotions of others built wisdom and compassion. Jack understood immediately. That's why your empathic abilities are considered a defect by the current leadership. You naturally do what these chambers were built to facilitate. Yes, the old ways valued emotional understanding. But after the last harmonics war, our people turned away from emotion, seeing it as dangerous, unpredictable. Science and logic became our guiding principles. Lyra's voice carried centuries of cultural pain. As they crossed the chamber, Jack noticed the crystals nearest to Lyra pulsing with vibrant colors. They're responding to you differently. My emotional range is broader than most Solarians, she acknowledged. The crystals recognize this. They reached another hidden doorway on the far side of the meditation chamber. Lyra placed her palm against it, and it slid open to reveal a more conventional corridor. The communication nexus is just ahead, she said, but we must cross exposed territory to reach it. Jack peered cautiously into the corridor. It appeared empty, but years of combat experience had taught him that appearances could be deceiving. Dr. Chen, stay between us. If we encounter resistance, drop to the floor immediately. The scientist nodded nervously, clutching his data tablet like a shield. They moved swiftly down the corridor, Jack automatically falling into the point man position he had occupied countless times in combat situations. His senses were heightened, attuned to any hint of movement or sound. The corridor remained eerily empty. Something's wrong, Jack murmured. Security should be heavier in this section. Perhaps Krell has concentrated his forces elsewhere, Lyra suggested, though she sounded uncertain. They reached a massive door inlaid with intricate crystalline patterns that seemed to shift and reconfigure constantly. The Royal Communication Nexus, Lyra said, placing her palm against the central pattern. Only those of royal blood can access it. The door recognized her immediately, patterns aligning and glowing with increased intensity before sliding open. Inside lay a chamber unlike any Jack had seen before, a spherical room where gravity seemed to work differently, allowing them to walk on any surface. At the center floated a complex crystalline structure that resembled a three-dimensional mandala, constantly shifting and reforming. The heart of voices, Lyra explained, approaching the central structure. From here I can broadcast to every crystal surface on the ship. Dr. Chen moved closer, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his caution. The engineering principles must be extraordinary. Some form of quantum entanglement, perhaps. Something like that, Lyra agreed, placing both hands on the floating crystal. It responded to her touch, pulsing with increasing luminosity. I can establish the broadcast network, but we need the evidence from Sarah's team to make any accusations against Krell credible. Jack activated the communication device Lyra had provided. Colonel Mitchell, status report. Sarah's voice came through clearly, though pitched low. We've reached Krell's office, sir. Minimal resistance. Most guards appear to have been deployed elsewhere. We're accessing his private terminal now. Be careful, Jack warned. The lack of security could mean a trap. Acknowledged. We're proceeding with caution. One of the Queen's loyal guards is helping us navigate the security protocols. Jack exchanged glances with Lyra. We're in position at the communication nexus, standing by for transmission. Understood. Mitchell out. As they waited, Jack circled the spherical room, examining the structure with a tactical eye. This chamber is well protected, but there's only one entrance. If Krell's forces discover us here, we'll be trapped. The meditation crystals in the outer chamber will provide some warning, Lyra said. They'll react to approaching hostility. Dr. Chen, who had been examining the broadcast crystal with fascination, suddenly straightened. I've been thinking about something, the timing of all this, Krell's coup coinciding exactly with the binding ceremony. It can't be coincidence. Jack nodded grimly. It's not. The ceremony provided the perfect distraction. All attention focused on the historic union while Krell positioned his forces. It's more than that, Lyra added, her violet eyes troubled. The binding ceremony required the presence of all high officials, including those loyal to me. It gave Krell the opportunity to isolate my supporters all at once. A classic strategy, Jack confirmed. I've seen similar tactics in military coups on Earth. Neutralize opposition leadership during a high-profile event when security protocols are altered to accommodate ceremony. Their conversation was interrupted by the communication device activating again. Colonel Reynolds, Sarah's voice had changed, tighter, more urgent. We've found something. Krell has been planning this for years. The Sacred Moon's destruction was manipulated. He knew about your weapons test in advance and deliberately withheld information that would have prevented the accident. Jack felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He wanted the moon destroyed. Yes, sir. According to these records, the moon contained ancient weapons technology the current council had declared forbidden. Krell has been secretly recovering fragments from the debris field. Can you transmit the evidence? Jack asked. Sending now. But there's more. We've uncovered immediate tactical plans. Krell has positioned the ship's primary weapons to target major Earth cities. The attack sequence is already initiated. Countdown shows less than 30 minutes until firing position is achieved. Lyra's face paled, the silvery sheen of her skin taking on an ashen quality. The cleansing array. It's our most powerful weapon system, capable of penetrating planetary defense systems. We need to stop it, Jack said firmly. Sarah, can you access the weapons controls from your location? Negative, sir. The system requires command-level authorization. We're locked out. Jack turned to Lyra. Your royal authentication. Would it override Krell's commands? Ordinarily, yes, but if the Council invoked the emergency sovereignty provision, my access would be temporarily suspended. Her expression hardened with determination. However, there is another way. The weapon systems have a physical override in the Central Command Core. Where is that? The most heavily guarded section of the ship. Lyra's gaze met his, both of them, understanding the implications. We would need to fight our way in. The communication device chimed again as the data from Sarah's team began transferring. Dr. Chen immediately connected his tablet to receive it. This is extraordinary, the scientist murmured as he examined the files. Not just coup evidence, but historical data about the Sacred Moon technical specifications for weapons systems. Focus on what we need to stop the attack and expose Krell, Jack instructed. As Chen worked, Jack turned to Lyra. Once we broadcast this evidence, what's our best scenario? If enough ship commanders see proof of Krell's deception, they might stand down, she replied, though her tone suggested limited confidence. But the most loyal will follow his orders regardless. Then we need a two-pronged approach, Jack decided, falling back on decades of military strategy. We broadcast the evidence to create confusion and division among Krell's forces, then use that distraction to reach the command core and manually override the weapons. The core is at least 20 levels below us, Lyra cautioned, even using the secret passages we would need to cross multiple secured areas. I've got it, Dr. Chen exclaimed suddenly. The evidence is compelling. Krell not only knew about the weapons test in advance, he deliberately adjusted orbital calculations to ensure the moon would be in the weapon's path. Jack's jaw tightened. He sacrificed your people's sacred historical site just to get his hands on forbidden weapons technology. And to create a pretext for war with Earth, Lyra added, a cold anger evident in her voice. Thousands of years of our cultural heritage destroyed for his ambition. The countdown is still running, Jack reminded them, focusing on the immediate threat. Dr. Chen, prepare the evidence for broadcast. Queen Lyra, how quickly can you transmit it? Immediately, once the data is formatted correctly. Jack activated the communication device again. Sarah, we're preparing to broadcast the evidence ship-wide. Once we do, Krell will know exactly where we are. I need your team to create a diversion near the Central Command Core. We'll use the chaos to reach the weapons override. Understood, sir. We'll head there now. Sarah's voice carried the calm determination of a soldier preparing for high-risk operations. Shall we rendezvous at the core entrance? Negative. Your primary mission is to protect Dr. Chen and ensure the broadcast reaches as many ship systems as possible. He'll need extraction once we go public. There was a brief pause. With respect, sir, that leaves you and the Queen attempting to breach the most secure location on the ship without backup. Can't be helped, Colonel. Earth safety is the priority. Jack's tone made it clear this was a command decision not open for debate. Coordinate with Lyra's loyal guard for the extraction. They'll know safe routes off this level. Yes, sir. Good luck. Jack turned back to find Lyra watching him, those violet eyes measuring him with newfound respect. You've done this before, she observed. Made the choice to undertake the most dangerous aspect of a mission yourself rather than risk your subordinates. It's what leaders do, Jack replied simply. We ask others to risk their lives only when absolutely necessary. Dr. Chen interrupted their exchange. The broadcast package is ready. I've organized the evidence chronologically, starting with Krell's knowledge of the weapons test through his recovery of forbidden technology to his current attack plans against Earth. Lyra approached the central crystal formation, which pulsed in response to her proximity. Once I initiate the broadcast, every crystal surface on the ship will display this information. It cannot be stopped even by Krell's authorization. Do it, Jack said. Lyra placed both hands on the crystal. It flared brilliantly, light coursing through her body like a visible current. The spherical chamber hummed with energy as the crystal formation reconfigured itself into a complex geometric pattern. Broadcast initiated, she announced, her voice strained with effort. Ship-wide distribution in progress. Throughout the vessel, every crystalline surface, walls control, panels personal devices, suddenly displayed the same images and data. Krell's treachery laid bare for all to see his deliberate sacrifice of the sacred moon, his secret recovery of forbidden weapons, his orchestrated coup, and his imminent attack plans against Earth. Jack could almost feel the shockwave of revelations spreading through the ship. How long will the broadcast continue? The full presentation will repeat 3 times, Lyra explained, stepping back from the crystal, looking slightly drained from the effort. By our laws that constitutes official royal declaration, it cannot be dismissed as unauthorized communication. Then we move now, Jack decided, while Krell's forces are responding to the broadcast we make for the command corps. Lyra nodded, leading them to a section of wall that appeared identical to the rest of the chamber. At her touch, a hidden passage revealed itself. This way leads down toward the lower levels. We can bypass most of the security checkpoints, but eventually we'll need to cross exposed territory. As they slipped into the passage, the ship-wide alert system activated. A resonant tone echoed through the structure, followed by Krell's voice, controlled but with an undercurrent of rage. Attention all personnel. Disregard the unauthorized transmission currently displaying on ship systems. It contains falsified information designed to create division among our people. The human delegation has hacked our communication network and is attempting to prevent us from bringing justice to those who destroyed our sacred moon. Security teams to all levels. Locate and detain the humans and the former sovereign immediately. Former sovereign, Dr. Chen repeated, alarmed. Can he do that? Not legally, Lyra replied as they hurried through the passage. But if he controls enough of the military, history is written by the victors, Jack finished grimly. All the more reason to stop that weapons array. They descended rapidly through the ship's levels via the hidden network. Jack could sense they were moving deeper into the heart of the vessel. The passages becoming older, the crystalline structure more rigid and angular. The ship's alert tones continued, periodically interspersed with updates from Krell that grew increasingly desperate as more of his deception was exposed. Jack's communication device activated. Colonel, this is Mitchell. The broadcast is having an effect. We're seeing confusion among the security teams, some actively questioning their orders. The younger officers especially seem to be reconsidering their loyalties. Good. What about the command corps? Heavy security presence, but divided attention. Your distraction is working. We've linked up with more of the Queen's loyal guards. They're creating additional disruptions throughout the ship. Maintain communication blackout until extraction, Jack instructed. We can't risk Krell triangulating your position. Understood, Mitchell out. They continued their descent until Lyra finally halted before a sealed passage entrance. This is as close as the hidden network gets to the command corps. Beyond this point, we'll need to cross approximately 100 meters of main corridor to reach the core entrance. Jack considered their options. What's the security situation in that corridor likely to be? Under normal circumstances, at least 6 guards at fixed positions plus regular patrols, Lyra replied. But with the current chaos, it could be either abandoned as guards respond to other threats or reinforced as a critical position, Jack finished. He'd faced similar tactical uncertainties in combat zones throughout his career. We need to know what we're walking into. Lyra placed her palm against the wall, closing her eyes to extend her empathic senses. I detect anxiety, confusion, determination, her brow furrowed with concentration. There are guards present, fewer than normal, but something else, a sense of anticipation of waiting. An ambush, Jack concluded. Krell anticipated we might target the core. He's positioned forces to intercept us. Dr. Chen looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the increasing military nature of their mission. Perhaps I should remain here. I'm not trained for combat situations. No, Jack decided. We don't split up. If we're captured, the information you have gathered about Krell's plans might prove critical in convincing others to oppose him. He turned back to Lyra. Is there anything in your royal authority that might give the guards pause even momentarily? Lyra considered this. The royal challenge. By ancient law, any member of the royal line can invoke a direct challenge that must be acknowledged before hostile action can be taken. It would give us perhaps seconds of advantage. Seconds are all we need, Jack said with the confidence of a veteran soldier. He checked the small sidearm Sarah had provided him, a standard-issue military pistol that seemed woefully inadequate against alien technology, but better than nothing. The core entrance has a biometric verification system, Lyra continued. Despite the emergency provision, my royal genetic signature should still override normal security. The question is whether Krell has had time to specifically lock me out. Only one way to find out, Jack said. He addressed them both with the calm authority that had guided soldiers through countless dangerous operations. Here's the plan. We exit the passage and move directly toward the core entrance. Dr. Chen stays between us. I'll take point, Lyra covers our rear. If we encounter resistance, Lyra invokes the royal challenge to create momentary confusion. We use that window to make a final push to the entrance. Questions? Both shook their heads. Then let's move. Lyra activated the hidden door, which slid open to reveal an empty section of the main corridor. They emerged cautiously, Jack scanning in all directions for threats. The corridor appeared deserted, but the prickling sensation at the back of his neck, an instinct honed through decades of combat, told him they were being watched. They moved swiftly toward the command core entrance, a massive crystalline structure that resembled an elaborate mandala pattern. As they approached, Jack spotted the subtle movement of shadows at the periphery of his vision, figures taking position to intercept them. Now, Jack ordered, as guards emerged from concealed positions on all sides, weapons raised. Halt in the name of General Krell, commanded the lead guard. Lyra stepped forward, her regal bearing unmistakable despite the circumstances. I invoke the royal challenge. Her voice rang with authority that transcended her physical presence. By the laws of the first harmonizers, I demand passage as is my birthright. The guards hesitated, their training conflicting with ancient law. In that moment of confusion, Jack acted. He grabbed Dr. Chen and propelled him forward while covering their advance with suppressive fire from his sidearm. The weapons reports echoed strangely in the crystalline corridor, the bullets causing unexpected fracture patterns where they struck. Lyra moved with surprising agility for someone recovering from an injury, reaching the core entrance, just steps behind them. She pressed her palm against the central pattern, which immediately began to glow in response to her royal genetic signature. Access granted, announced an automated voice as the massive door began to open. The guards, recovering from their initial hesitation, opened fire. Crystalline energy bursts struck the walls around them, sending shards flying in all directions. Jack felt a burning pain across his shoulder as one blast grazed him, but he maintained his position, returning fire to cover their retreat into the core. They slipped through the opening, and Lyra immediately activated the emergency seal from the inside. The door solidified, becoming impenetrable to conventional weapons. That won't hold them for long, she warned. Krell will have override codes. The command core was a circular chamber dominated by a massive crystalline structure that resembled an inverted tree, its roots spreading across the ceiling, while its trunk descended to the floor at the center. Countless smaller crystal formations branched from the main structure, each pulsing with different patterns of light. The central nexus, Lyra explained, moving toward the main trunk. From here, all major ship systems can be physically controlled, independent of the network. Dr. Chen stared at the structure in awe. The crystalline technology is extraordinary. It's simultaneously organic and mechanical, almost like a living computer. Where's the weapons override? Jack asked, maintaining focus on their objective while keeping an eye on the sealed entrance. The guards outside were already attempting to breach it, evident from the pulsing energy patterns visible through the translucent door. Lyra approached a specific branch of the crystal tree that glowed with a dangerous red light. The cleansing array controls, but deactivating it will require breaking the command sequence Krell has initiated. She placed both hands on the crystal formation, which responded by projecting complex three-dimensional patterns in the air around them. To Jack, it resembled a combination of mathematical equations and flowing musical notations. "Can you stop it?" he asked, acutely aware of the passing time. According to Sarah's information, they had perhaps 10 minutes before the weapons achieved firing position. "I'm trying," Lyra replied, her concentration evident as she manipulated the floating patterns. "Krell has locked the system with military override codes. I'm attempting to assert royal authority, but the system is conflicted." The door pulsed with increasing energy as the guards outside applied some form of cutting technology. Fracture patterns began to appear along its edges. "Work fast," Jack urged. "That door won't hold much longer." Dr. Chen approached hesitantly. "Perhaps I can help. If the system uses mathematical principles similar to what we observed in the hidden passages." Lyra nodded without breaking her concentration. "Yes, look for pattern sequences that follow the harmonic progression. If we can identify the underlying structure of Krell's command, we might be able to deconstruct it." The scientist joined her, his academic expertise finding unexpected application as he analyzed the floating patterns. Here, this sequence repeats at regular intervals. It must be the command authorization. Working together, Lyra and Chen began to isolate specific elements of the pattern, attempting to untangle Krell's instructions from the system's core functions. Jack kept his attention divided between their progress and the deteriorating door, which was now showing significant stress fractures. "We're running out of time," he warned. "Almost there," Lyra replied, her voice strained with effort. "The system is responding to my royal authorization, but Krell's military codes are creating interference." A loud crack echoed through the chamber as the door developed a major fracture from top to bottom. "They're breaking through," Jack announced, taking up a defensive position with his sidearm. "How much longer?" "Seconds only," Chen replied, his fingers dancing through the floating patterns alongside Lyra's. "This final sequence should—" The door shattered inward, crystalline shards exploding across the chamber. Guards poured through the opening, weapons raised. Jack fired immediately, forcing them to take cover and buying precious seconds. "Now," Chen exclaimed. Lyra made a decisive gesture, bringing her hands together in a clapping motion that sent a visible shockwave through the crystal tree. The red glow flickered, stuttered, and then faded, entirely, replaced by a calm blue luminescence. "Cleansing array deactivated," announced the automated system voice. "Weapons systems returning to standard configuration." The guards hesitated, clearly receiving updated information through their communication systems. In that moment of confusion, the chamber was suddenly bathed in brilliant white light as a new projection appeared above the central crystal. General Krell's face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice echoing throughout the core. "You've betrayed our people, denied them justice for the sacred moon." "The only betrayal is yours, Krell," Lyra replied, her voice carrying the full authority of her position. "You sacrificed our heritage for your ambition. You orchestrated the moon's destruction to gain access to forbidden weapons." "Lies," Krell snarled, though Jack noted the uncertain glances exchanged among the guards. The broadcast evidence was clearly having an effect. "The humans are manipulating you, just as I always warned. Their kind cannot be trusted." "And yet it was a human who helped prevent your attack on an innocent world," Lyra countered. She gestured to Jack. "Colonel Reynolds came here prepared to accept responsibility for an accident. You engineered a deliberate atrocity against our own history." The projection flickered as Krell struggled to maintain control of the situation. "Guards, arrest them immediately. That is a direct order." The guards advanced hesitantly, weapons still raised, but their movements uncertain. Jack maintained his defensive stance, knowing his remaining ammunition would barely slow them if they attacked in force. "Wait!" The command came from behind the guards as a new figure pushed through their ranks. Jack recognized the Solarian as Admiral Varel, one of the military leaders who had been present at the binding ceremony. Varel stepped into the chamber, his gaze moving between Jack, Lyra, and the projection of Krell. I have reviewed the broadcast evidence myself. I have verified its authenticity using my own security clearances. Varel, you fool, Krell hissed. You're being manipulated. The only manipulation has been yours, General, Varel replied calmly. I have accessed the original mission records from the Sacred Moon incident. They confirm everything the broadcast revealed. He turned to the guards. Stand down. By my authority as Fleet Admiral, I am countermanding General Krell's orders. The guards hesitated, caught between conflicting commands from their highest authorities. This is treason, Krell raged. I am acting under the emergency sovereignty provision. A provision you triggered using falsified security threats, Varel countered. He addressed the guards again. The Queen's Sovereign Guard has already secured the council chambers. Elder Thalos has revoked the emergency provision upon reviewing the evidence. One by one, the guards lowered their weapons. Krell's projection flickered more violently as he apparently lost control of more systems. This isn't over, he threatened before the projection collapsed entirely. Admiral Varel turned to Lyra and offered a formal bow. Sovereign, the loyal fleet stands with you. General Krell has barricaded himself in the military command section with his most devoted followers, but they are now outnumbered. What about his attack on Earth? Jack asked urgently. Neutralized, Varel confirmed. Your actions here prevented the cleansing array from achieving firing position. Earth was never in danger. Relief washed over Jack. The primary mission accomplished. Earth was safe. And Krell, Lyra asked. Surrounded but dangerous, Varel replied. He still controls significant weaponry within his section of the ship. We are attempting to negotiate his surrender. Jack's communication device activated. Colonel Reynolds, this is Mitchell. Are you all right, sir? We're secure, Jack confirmed. The weapons array has been neutralized. What's your status? Extracted with Dr. Chen's data, we've linked up with the Queen's loyal forces. The tide has definitely turned against Krell. As if to punctuate Sarah's assessment, a deep, resonant tone echoed throughout the ship, different from the previous alert signals. The Royal Restoration tone, Lyra explained, a hint of relief in her voice. The Council is formally acknowledging the return of sovereign authority. It appears we've won, Chen said, looking somewhat dazed by the rapid developments. Not completely. Jack cautioned, his decades of military experience making him wary of declaring victory prematurely. Krell is cornered, which makes him more dangerous. We need to secure his surrender. Admiral Varel nodded in agreement. The general has barricaded himself in the weapons research section. He has access to prototype technologies, including fragments recovered from the Sacred Moon. The forbidden weapons, Lyra said grimly. If he activates them, then we need to stop him, Jack concluded. Admiral, can you get us to that section? It would be extremely dangerous, Varel warned. But yes, I can provide access and tactical support. Jack turned to Lyra. This is your ship, your people. What do you want to do? She straightened her regal bearing, more evident than ever despite the case of recent events. Krell threatened both our worlds. He sacrificed our heritage for his ambition. I will confront him and end this conflict. Not alone, Jack stated firmly. We do this together. The determination in his voice must have reached something in Lyra, for her violet eyes softened momentarily. Together, then, as our binding ceremony promised, unity where there was division. As they prepared to leave the command core, Dr. Chen approached Jack. Colonel, I feel I should stay here to continue analyzing the systems. I may be able to help stabilize the ship's functions that were disrupted during Krell's takeover. Jack nodded. Good idea, Doctor. Stay with Admiral Varel's security team. If anything changes, contact us immediately. With the Admiral leading the way, Jack and Lyra departed the command core accompanied by a contingent of loyal guards. As they moved through the ship's quarters, Jack noticed a remarkable transformation. Where before the crystalline surfaces had glowed with cold, distant light, now they pulsed with warmer, more vibrant patterns. The ship itself seemed to be responding to the restoration of legitimate authority. The vessel is partially sentient, Lyra explained, noticing his observation. It recognizes harmonious leadership and responds accordingly. Their path took them deeper into the military section, where signs of conflict became evident. Damaged wall sections, disabled security barriers, and occasionally injured personnel being tended by medical teams. Krell's loyalists fought hard, Varel explained, but most surrendered once the evidence of his deception became undeniable. As they approached the research section, the Admiral halted the group. Beyond this point lies the high-security zone. Krell has sealed himself in the central laboratory with approximately 12 loyalists. Our sensors indicate unusual energy signatures. He may be attempting to activate the recovered technology. What exactly are we dealing with? Jack asked, his tactical mind assessing the threat. The forbidden weapons were created during our ancient wars, Lyra explained. They tap into the fundamental forces that bind matter together. Even small fragments could destroy significant portions of this vessel if improperly activated. Or be used as a suicide weapon, Jack concluded grimly. He might prefer destruction to surrender. Lyra nodded. It would align with his psychological profile. Krell has always believed in absolute victory or noble sacrifice. There's nothing noble about taking others with you, Jack said firmly. Years of military service had taught him the difference between sacrifice and senseless destruction. We need a way to communicate with him, offer terms that might convince him to stand down. I can establish a direct channel to the laboratory, Vorel suggested. Whether he'll listen? He'll listen, Lyra said with quiet certainty. His pride will demand it. Krell has always needed to justify his actions to frame them as necessary for our people's greatness. The Admiral activated a nearby communication panel, establishing a connection to the sealed laboratory. After a moment, Krell's face appeared on the crystal surface. Haggard but defiant, his silver skin bearing stress patterns Jack hadn't seen on Solarians before. Come to witness the consequences of your betrayal, Sovereign, Krell's voice dripped with contempt. Lyra stepped forward. This isn't about betrayal, Krell. It's about the future of our people. All our people. Our future died when you allied with these humans, Krell spat. They destroyed our heritage and now you welcome them as equals. The destruction was an accident, Jack interjected, stepping into view. One you deliberately facilitated to further your own agenda. Krell's eyes narrowed. The human speaks as if he understands our ways, our needs. You know nothing of what drives us, of what we require to survive. I know more than you think, Jack replied calmly. I've seen leaders like you on my world, men who use fear and false threats to seize power, who sacrifice others while claiming it's for the greater good. Your primitive world has no concept of the true greater good, Krell retorted. The technologies I've recovered will elevate our civilization beyond anything you can imagine. At what cost? Lyra challenged. The ancient texts are clear about why these weapons were forbidden. They don't just destroy the enemy, they corrupt the user. Each activation damages the fundamental harmony of existence. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Krell's face. Superstitious nonsense from an outdated era. Is it? Lyra pressed. Look at yourself, General. The resonance patterns in your skin, they're degrading. The technology is already affecting you at the cellular level. Jack studied Krell more closely and realized Lyra was right. The General's silver skin showed unusual discoloration patterns, and his movements seemed slightly uncoordinated. A temporary adaptation phase. Krell dismissed, though, with less conviction. The power is worth the kin. No power is worth the destruction of everything you claim to protect, Jack said, drawing on wisdom gained through decades of conflict. I've fought in wars across Earth, seen good people succumb to the belief that the end justifies any means. That path leads only to more destruction, never to peace. Peace, Krell scoffed. Another human delusion. The universe respects only power and those willing to use it. Then why did you need deception? Lyra asked pointedly. If your path was righteous, why not openly advocate for it? Why orchestrate the destruction of our sacred heritage in secret? The question struck home. Krell's expression faltered, the certainty in his eyes wavering. Stand down, General, Jack urged, recognizing the critical moment when a combatant begins to question their own resolve. End this without further bloodshed. Face judgment with the dignity of a soldier rather than the desperation of a cornered animal. For a long moment, Krell stared at them through the communication crystal, internal conflict evident in his expression. Then something shifted in his eyes, a hardening, a return to cold determination. No, he said quietly, I will not surrender what I have fought decades to achieve. If our civilization lacks the courage to seize its destiny, then perhaps it deserves to fall. He reached for something off-screen, and the laboratory behind him pulsed with ominous energy. He's activating the fragments, Vorel warned, studying a monitoring crystal. Energy signatures are spiking dangerously. Can you override the laboratory systems? Jack asked urgently. Negative, he's isolated the controls. Lyra stepped closer to the communication crystal. Krell, listen to me. The technology isn't stable. You're risking catastrophic failure that could destroy half the ship. A necessary sacrifice, Krell replied, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. From destruction comes renewal. Our ancestors understood this principle. Jack recognized the signs of someone who had moved beyond rational argument, whether from ideological fanaticism or possibly direct influence from the technology Krell was handling. We need to breach that laboratory, Jack decided. Now, before he fully activates whatever he's working with. Admiral Varel shook at his head. The security protocols are designed to prevent exactly that. It would take hours to safely penetrate the barriers. But my royal authorization might still work, Lyra suggested. If enough of the system remains loyal to the sovereign authority, it's worth trying, Jack agreed. They moved quickly to the laboratory entrance, a massive security door, even more imposing than the one protecting the command core. Lyra approached the access panel and placed her palm against it. Access denied, announced the system. Emergency research protocols in effect. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating deeply. I am invoking Sovereign Override Alpha by the authority of the first harmonizers in the royal lineage I command access. The panel flickered uncertainly, caught between competing authorities. It's not working, Varel observed tensely. Krell's modifications are too extensive. Jack studied the door drawing on his years of military experience with secured facilities. There's always a backup. No security system is designed without emergency access for situations exactly like this. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. The harmonizer's passage. Every critical section has one. A direct override that can only be activated by royal blood under conditions of extreme need. Where is it? Jack asked. She moved to what appeared to be a decorative crystal formation beside the main door. Here, but it requires more than just genetic verification. It demands emotional resonance of sufficient intensity. Your empathic abilities, Jack realized. The very trait your society considered a defect might be our salvation. Lyra placed both hands on the crystal, closing her eyes. The system needs to detect genuine concern for the collective welfare, not just personal authority. It was designed to prevent misuse of power motivated by selfish interests. As she concentrated, the crystal began to glow with increasing intensity. Sweat beaded on her silver skin, evidence of the mental effort she was exerting. It's responding, she whispered. But it needs more. Stronger emotional resonance than I can generate alone. Jack understood immediately. He stepped forward and placed his hands over hers on the crystal. Then we do this together, like the binding ceremony promised. Their eyes met for a moment, violet alien eyes and weathered human ones, both carrying the weight of responsibility for their respective worlds. Something passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended their different biologies and backgrounds. The crystal flared brilliantly, pulsing with rainbow light that spread outward through the surrounding wall. With a resonant tone, the security door began to reconfigure, crystals shifting to create an opening. Emergency access granted, announced the system. Sovereign authority confirmed. They entered the laboratory cautiously, Jack taking point as they navigated through the outer chambers. The air felt charged with strange energy that made the hair on his arms stand on end, a sensation he'd experienced only once before during the Defiant's fateful weapons test. They found Krell in the central chamber, surrounded by floating fragments of crystalline material that pulsed with unstable energy patterns. The general himself looked transformed, his silver skin now marbled with dark veins, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Too late, he said, his voice distorted. The harmonic convergence has begun. The ancient power awakens. The floating fragments were clearly growing more unstable energy, arcing between them in chaotic patterns. Jack didn't need scientific expertise to recognize the signs of an imminent catastrophic reaction. Krell, you need to shut it down, he urged. Whatever you think you're achieving, this technology is controlling you, not the other way around. You understand nothing, Krell replied, though his voice contained an undertone of pain. This is ascension, not control. The ancients are speaking through me now. Those aren't the ancients, Lyra said firmly. That's the corruption the text warned about. The weapons don't just destroy physically, they corrupt consciousness itself. Jack noticed that several of Krell's loyalists lay unconscious, or worse, around the chamber, apparently overcome by the energies being released. The general himself seemed barely in control, his movements becoming increasingly erratic. Admiral, Jack said quietly to Varel, who had entered behind them, evacuate this section immediately. Get everyone as far from this chamber as possible. What about you? The Admiral asked. We'll handle Krell. Just get your people to safety. As Varel retreated to organize the evacuation, Jack assessed their options. The unstable energy was growing stronger by the second, making direct approach to Krell increasingly dangerous. Lyra, can your empathic abilities reach him? Break through whatever influence that technology has on his mind. She studied Trell intently. I can try, but the interference is substantial. The energy fields are distorting normal emotional patterns. Try, Jack encouraged. I'll look for a way to disrupt the energy reaction. While Lyra focused on Krell, Jack circled the chamber searching for anything that might help them. His eyes fell on a control console that appeared to be monitoring the energy levels between the fragments. If he could somehow desynchronize the fragments, Lyra had begun speaking to Krell in the musical Solarian language, her voice taking on harmonic qualities that seemed to briefly stabilize the chaotic energy patterns. Krell responded erratically, sometimes in his normal voice, sometimes in tones that sounded nothing like him. Jack reached the console and studied its displays. Though the symbols were alien, the energy graphs were understandable enough. They showed resonance patterns between the fragments, currently building toward a harmonic convergence point that he suspected would trigger a massive release of energy. Drawing on his technical training from decades of military service, Jack began manipulating the controls, attempting to introduce counter-harmonic patterns into the system. The fragments responded, their pulsing rhythms faltering briefly before resuming their buildup. It's not enough, Jack called to Lyra. The system keeps reestablishing the harmonic connection. Lyra, still focused on Krell, replied without breaking her concentration. The fragments are quantum entangled. They naturally seek harmonic alignment unless actively prevented. An idea struck Jack. Crazy dangerous, but possibly their only option. Your binding ceremony. You said it connected us at a fundamental level, right? Could we use that connection to disrupt the harmonics? Lyra's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, the binding creates a unique resonance pattern. If we amplify it through the central control system, show me how, Jack said, moving to make room for her at the console. Lyra joined him, their shoulders touching as they worked the alien controls together. She guided his hands to specific crystal formations, and together they began generating a counter-harmonic pattern based on the unique resonance created by their ceremonial binding. Krell noticed what they were attempting. No, he shouted, lurching toward them. You'll destroy everything we've worked for. But his movements were uncoordinated, his control over his own body clearly compromised by the technology's influence. Jack positioned himself between Krell and Lyra, allowing her to continue working on the disruption pattern. It's working, she announced as the fragments began to pulse out of sync. The convergence is destabilizing. Krell made a final desperate lunge toward the central fragment, the largest piece, which appeared to be coordinating the others. If I can't control it, no one will, he declared, reaching for the pulsing crystal. Don't, Lyra warned. Direct contact at this stage will... Her warning came too late. Krell grasped the central fragment, and immediately a blinding flash of energy erupted from the contact point. The general's body convulsed as energy coursed through him, his silver skin cracking like pottery in a kiln. Jack reacted instantly, tackling Lyra away from the console as energy began to cascade throughout the system. They tumbled to the floor behind a partially shielded section just as a shockwave of energy tore through the laboratory. When they could see again, Krell was gone, not dead in any conventional sense, but seemingly absorbed into the crystalline structure itself, his essence scattered among the now darkened fragments. The ultimate price of forbidden knowledge, Lyra whispered, a mixture of horror and pity in her voice. This is why our ancestors banned this technology. The laboratory fell silent, the dangerous energy buildup completely dissipated. The fragments that had caused so much trouble now appeared inert, their glow extinguished. Is it over? Jack asked, helping Lyra to her feet. Yes, she confirmed, studying the fragments with expert eyes. The harmonic convergence has been broken. The technology has returned to dormancy. Admiral Varel returned with a security team surveying the aftermath with professional detachment. Sovereign, the ship has been secured. All of General Krell's remaining loyalists have surrendered or been detained. And Earth, Jack asked. Safe, Varel confirmed. We've established communication with your planetary authorities to reassure them that the crisis has passed. Relief washed over Jack. The mission accomplished, his world protected. But as he looked around at the alien laboratory, at Lyra's exhausted but regal form, at the evidence of ancient powers beyond human understanding, he realized that this was more than just another mission. It represented a turning point for both their civilizations. Whatever came next would be unprecedented. A true alliance between worlds that had nearly destroyed each other, bridged by an aging soldier who had found purpose when he least expected it. What happens now? He asked Lyra quietly. She met his gaze with those extraordinary violet eyes. Now, Jack Reynolds, we build something new. Together.